I mean, what is that nonsense of 350? What can a young person do with 350?
That's actually $20.
That is
That's
a $20.
That's very embarrassing.
This is the Hustler's Corner.
Hustlers and squatters, brothers and sisters from all over the world, welcome to Johannesburg. Big homie Smuda out here. First up, we go straight to that shop sign on the count of 1, 2, 3. Click that like button. Click. Thank you very much. Let's click the subscription button so you become a part of the family. Click. Don't forget to switch on that notification bell. And you do not forget to, join the family. I actually want to give a big shout out to some of our brand new members who are joining to pay a certain amount of money every month so they become paying members. Like I am, I pay at Podcast and Chill. And I also have got other podcasts that I pay monthly who give me value for my money. Podcasts that I think are giving me so much value that I don't mind paying them. So I'll give you guys a list of some new members. King Debza, Stephen Afiak, Beitor, Lebogang Molungwane, Sylvester Mashile, Seni Kupega. I want to give a big shout out to Matume, Mama Bolo, Seneliso Panda, Usbong Seni. Jesus, so many of you guys. But I just want to say thank you for becoming our brand new paying members. Guys, for you to make sure that we keep our lights on this podcast or any other podcast that you like, make sure that you watch the ads. That's how YouTube gets to pay us. Although there's other ways, we don't make as much money as a lot of people think. You've heard on the McG interview with Saul when they were here, they did explain that YouTube doesn't pay us that much. But for us to be able to keep our lights on, we'll appreciate you guys. If you think we're giving you valuable content to become a paying member, there's a button there that is written join. So join. And by the way, there's some links there on the description. Click and subscribe on the Virtual Mkuku podcast. Click and subscribe to Penuel, who's my co-host on the Virtual Mkuku on Mondays. Become a subscriber or a member of his YouTube channel and my own personal YouTube channel. And for those who are property investors or potential property investors with Ekasi Noble Property in Development, click that link. It'll take you to Ekasi Noble Property Development so you can see opportunities that are there. There's an upcoming estate in Bearsnodere. There's upcoming townhouse complexes in Randfontein. We're working. We're getting into real estate, this real estate thing. We are in crypto. We're in podcasting. We're in beverages. Guys, the times have changed. You're not going to be elected. Elect yourself and just tell yourself, the person that I'm sitting with here is a young person that I kind of feel this is youth leadership in the country that needs to be cross-questioned about who are you? Where are you from? Where you take? Because he is not waiting to be elected. He's electing himself. But on top of that, then he's being elected and is getting recognized because there's a lot of voices that are popping up all over. That's why we've got even Penuel as part of the podcast, because it's one of those voices that I feel are necessary. Young people that are making a difference, young people that are speaking their mind. You don't have to agree with them, but they're like, you know what? Like, it's 2022. You guys have done your thing. It's our time right now. And as Biko Miss Buddha, I'm saying, guys, exactly. That's exactly the truth. It's your time. Get up and go get them. So I'm just sitting with the national chair of the Eskom electricity crisis. I'd put it that way. He'll explain to us what's the exact name. Maybe I might probably get out getting it wrong. He'll correct me. Number 2, he is also the national spokesperson of COSAS. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Douglas Ngobeni. How are you doing, sir?
No, thanks, Krotman, DJ Spoo. Well, I have to admit that I never thought that this opportunity would ever come to my life, sitting in a table with yourself like this, because growing up, I've always looked up to characters like DJ Spoo. Growing up, there was Umzegezeke, and we always looked up to Umzegezeke until at a later stage growing up, we found out, no, man, Umzegezeke is not some funny character or something which just fell off from the sky, but it's a Krotman, yourself, DJ Spoo. So
I'm not Mzegezeke, by the way.
No. You are not Mzegezeke. There's Mzegezeke who lived inside you.
No, he did not live inside me. I worked with him. How you doing, my brother?
Proper.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for having us.
No, we appreciate you giving us your time. I think the first thing I'd like to correct and get right there, what is the national electricity crisis? Please correct me there.
Well, South Africa, 28 years after democracy, after the African National Congress is elected into government, has had electricity crisis. Because before democracy, You had Eskom. Eskom, which only supplied electricity to at least 15% of the population, and that population was predominantly white. And then now, 28 years later, we have an Eskom which is becoming or proving to be dysfunctional. So a cohort of young people came together, a cohort of young revolutionaries came together, led by myself, to say, but we need to challenge the status quo in terms of electricity provision, because electricity is a basic right. Now, what happened is that every now and then there is an introduction of load shedding, and then load shedding affects enormously the daily lives of our people, and it looks as if the people at Megawatt Park are just enjoying this thing. Some, well, maybe because of the evergreen contracts with Eskom, it's something which is profitable for them. So we took a decision at some point a few weeks or a month ago to say that no, we are young revolutionaries. We are not going to wait for anyone to marshal us in this particular regard. So we say that we are going to march to Eskom, and we are going to demand the resignation of the CEO of Eskom, Andre de Ruyter, because we know, we have made our research there to say what are the problems within Eskom, because there's a crisis in Eskom, and the only people who we believe are going to be able to fix the problem, which is at Eskom, is the South African people, more particularly young people. So we are an Eskom crisis committee because we are young people who, by the way, are fearless. At some point, you will have the media deeming Pravin as the most powerful figure in South Africa, as the most powerful person in South Africa. But at that point, we reached a point of no retreat, no surrender. It's either we fight or submit, and we decided to fight. And if you look at how things are today, load shedding has been reduced. In fact, the past week we have not had load shedding, because part of the things which we did as the Eskom Crisis Committee, indirectly, which the media cannot report now, is that we have forced the president of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to go and visit all these power stations. And part of the power stations he visited is one in Mpumalanga. When he arrives there, he's with Andre de Ruyter, he's with Pravin. When he arrives there, he finds that there are units of the power station which are kept off for no reason. And then they were switched up. I'm speaking today here. They are already producing at least 900 megawatts. So hence we do not have this consistent load shedding. So what I believe we have done is that we have found a solution to the crisis which is there in Eskom. And it seems as if this revolution which we are currently in participation of is bearing fruits and results.
Well, how does marching help, though?
Well, it's just a demonstration to say that people are tired. It is also kind of sending a message. But I always have an argument with all my peers to say that, hey, but it looks as if we are peaceful today. We are peaceful young people nowadays, because in a normal case, there should not be any peace in a march. In a march, in a revolution, there should be tires burning. There should be some form of vandalism. Obviously not to essential property and everything, private property and what's not. But when we march, I believe we are sending a strong message to whoever is in charge.
Somebody else can listen and say, he's sending an irresponsible message. What does it mean? There must be some form of vandalism. Vandalizing whose properties?
We are vandalizing the establishment. We are vandalizing the status quo, actually. Hence, I've said we're not vandalizing property, but we are vandalizing an idea. In a sense that there are people today here in South Africa who are seated confidently, thinking that they can do all that which they want with our people and our country, and they are not going to be confronted, they are not going to be challenged. So that is the form of vandalism we are speaking about. But obviously, burning a tire is within us as black people to say that every time we protest, there should be smoke, So, well, this vandalism is not explicit to an extent that after our march or whatever, the government will have to come, fix roads again. There are buildings which have collapsed. There's looting which happened and everything. But you know, in a revolution, you grew up in Ekasi, and you know that every time the people of Tembisa rose up to say that we are confronting something, there would always be a revolution. A revolution is not defined by English, but a revolution is defined by action.
Do you think the Eskom crisis is deliberate?
It's very much so. It's very much so because, one, I will speak of the former CEO of Eskom, Brian Molefe, who left Eskom in 2018. Eskom had a surplus of 20,000 megawatts of energy. Now, Andre De Rota comes in as a CEO. What happens there in Eskom is that there is a sense in which I believe people want to privatize Eskom, like they did with SAA. They sold SAA for 51 rands. So they want to do the same with Eskom. In Eskom today, there are evergreen contracts. There are white people who are seated at their homes comfortably, knowing that every month they're getting millions and millions from Eskom because they have signed more than 100-year deals with Eskom, this and that. So the sabotage now is that these people who have these deals with Eskom must now come and own Eskom, you know. So the sabotage within Eskom is very real, it's very deliberate, because you look at how Eskom used to operate and how it is operating now, its executives and everything. They went and fetched the router. The router came from Nampak. He was the CEO of Nampak. He made it a point that the share price of Nampak collapses. He collapsed that company. So they took a delinquent. They promoted him to the most vital entity in our society, which is Eskom. Eskom is meant to keep our lights afloat. There are people every day who are in hospitals who depend on life support machines. I mean, people today just die because electricity has went off, this and that. But because the establishment, the system now does not care necessarily, because they want to create a crisis. They want to create a narrative that there is a very serious crisis in Eskom. And then what happens next? They will call business rescue practitioners who are going to be paid a lot of money, by the way. And then the conclusion thereof will be that the state is not going to be able to take Eskom forward. What needs to happen is that there needs to be private ownership of Eskom. They believe that when Eskom or any SOE is at the hands of private means, it is going to be more accessible to people, it's going to be more operative. Because now the problem is that people believe that Eskom should make a profit. And that is the duty of Eskom is not to make a profit. The duty of Eskom is to keep the lights afloat in South Africa.
But it must still make a profit, right? And that's why I'm sure a lot of people are very much against what's going on, and they're saying it's deliberate because, you know, they want to sell it to the independent power producers, the IPPs. But then you're also hearing a lot of messages from overseas, like from the Americans, like recently were being debated in the UK Parliament, and they're talking about us moving away from coal.
No, you know, I don't believe that Europeans can solve our problems as South Africans or as Africans. African problems need African solutions. Now, you go to Mpumalanga. There's a point when Eskom was introducing load shedding. The argument thereof was that the coal is wet, this and that. Coal is no longer conducive, this and that. Now, when you shut down a coal mine, you are not only shutting down that coal mine, you are shutting down opportunities for black people, because there are many black people who work in those mines. A lot of people feed their families through mining there. And well, it is not true that South Africa needs green energy, this and that, because you go to the very same Europe now. They are exporting coal from South Africa to Europe. They're doing coal farming there, because they know that in the near future, coal is the only way that the electricity is going to be on. It's a source of energy. if you want to use renewable energy, this and that, it has got a lot of contradictions. And we're not ready as South Africa, by the way, because at some point there was a proposal that we should go for nuclear, this and that, but it has not worked. But South Africa currently has got enough coal which can last us for at least 400 years. So why should we do away with our own precious mineral? Why do we have to give it to Europe? Why does Europe have to debate? Why does Europe have to speak on our behalf as South Africans? Because we know that there's coal in Mpumalanga, and coal is keeping our lights on today. So why should we move away from coal?
Let's talk about solutions. Does it help the problem for the Rata to step down?
Obviously, because one, the Rata is a delinquent. The Rata came from Nampak. He was a delinquent. There is nothing which he contributed there. So it means now that he's a very clueless man. How do you give an entity like Eskom to a person who holds a BA? It needs engineering, that thing. It needs one to be an expert in what he does, so that we do not have a situation where we'll have to outsource knowledge when there's a crisis. We don't need people wearing suits every day to office in Eskom. We need people who have got an idea of what is energy. How do we fix the problem which we have currently? So now the router does not have any of those qualities. So now if the Rata leaves, it now means that we are now moving towards a direction which is going to be solitable for Eskom, because we must introduce a person who knows what are the problems, how do we solve the problems. And the Rata, by the way, is only a scapegoat of Pravin. The person who's creating a mess in South Africa, and both for South Africa and the ANC, is Pravin Gordhan. There's nothing which Pravin has ever touched and is beautiful today. Go to all the departments which Pravin has led. There's nothing you can point to say that this has been built by Pravin. But his own companies, they are proper. But now, the problem is that they do not care about the people of South Africa. They only care about their pockets. That is why when people argue that Eskom is not making a profit, I always ask myself, but why should Eskom make a profit? The only thing which Eskom should worry about is operational costs, how it pays its employees and everything. Today, we are speaking, there was a company which was called from France to come and fix some power stations here. When they arrived, they said, no, but this environment is not conducive for our company to work in. Those people went back with a fat check of 1 billion for nothing. The very same Rata paid 5 billion to a certain company.
Is that a fact?
That is a fact.
Are you serious?
That is a fact.
Okay, when was it?
I think a year or two ago.
Okay.
A year or two ago, the Rata paid, and fraudulently, 5 billion to a company. And speaking about the very same media, the mainstream media, they come now and call it accounting irregularities. The Rata now is not even held accountable. So now people are worried about Eskom making a profit, but they're not worried about this comeback of the Rata stealing money from Eskom. The very same institution which is supposed to turn around, still collapsing it.
So are you calling for Pravin Gordhan to step down?
Most definitely.
Okay.
There is not even a single SOE in South Africa which is operational under Pravin.
So I'm looking at SA, I'm looking at Dinel, I'm looking at Prasa. Obviously, I come from the SABC background, and I'm looking at Eskom right now.
Yeah.
And obviously, everybody feels the pain of Eskom, especially business owners like ourselves.
Yeah.
For us to be able to run our business, lights have to be on so we can be able to employ people.
Yeah.
But I think the most important point you touched on as well is that some people's lives or some people's medication are actually entirely dependent on Eskom's lights being on. So is it the solution for Pravin to step down? And how does that happen? Or how is your organization planning to escalate this matter?
Look, we have already started waging a war against Pravin. We're not only waging a war against Pravin, we are waging a war against each and every person in South Africa who is anti-black people, who is counter-revolutionary. I belong to a movement called the African National Congress. The ANC goes to its conferences. It takes some certain policy positions. And amongst the policy positions that the ANC has taken is that there should not be any privatization, is that there should be electricity for our people. Now, Pravin is a deployee of the African National Congress, leading as a Minister of Public Enterprises. When he arrives in that department, the first thing first he does is to sabotage all these entities so that he's able to privatize them. We look at how SAA was privatized. Pravin just went there, brought his business rescue practitioners, and then a few months down the line, there was a suggestion that no, SAA cannot make profit anymore. And that is the argument, by the way.
Yeah.
SAA cannot make profit anymore. We need to sell it. He sold it to Takatso Consortium without even engaging with the cabinet. He has not even engaged with the president. The tender or the sale was not even advertised. So it is clear that he has always had a motive of giving SAA to his friend, his cousins and everything. Today, the very same Pravin, there's a friend of his, a white friend of his, who wrote to him to say that I've heard Mhloba Muguchi, there's a crisis of engineers at Eskom. I want to give you engineers from the union called Solidarity, SOS. I want to give you engineers and this thing. Pravin responded with a letterhead of the department of our government to say, no, my friend, give me a list of those engineers. I will put them in Eskom. So what will happen there? It means that the black engineers who are there already are going to be undermined by these juniors, which are now brought in by a Pravin's friend. And what is most likely to happen in that regard is that the engineers which are going to be brought there are going to further sabotage Eskom, so that Eskom, at the end of the day, is sold. So the departure of Pravin will indeed be a lifesaver for South Africans.
So you are the national chairperson of COSAS, which is the Congress of South African Students.
Spokesperson, actually.
Spokesperson, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, your journey at COSAS, because I'd like to also get into the ANC matters. And a lot of people are disgruntled about the ANC. I've recently just had the new chair in Gauteng, Mr. Panyaza Luswif. A lot of people kind of felt I was very soft on him, although a lot of people kind of felt, I think some people are saying they've been following his leadership. And, they feel confident about leaders like him emerging, but there's still a lot of people who kind of feel ANC is beyond repair, for lack of a better word.
No, well, we can confidently say that our arrival in the ANC has given hope to the ANC as a whole, because the ANC has always survived with the introduction of new cohort of young revolutionaries. You look at the 1994 generation of Anton Lambert, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu. For an entire 4 years, they were fighting for that the ANC must be visible again on the ground, because they came in with a program of action, the Defiance campaign, and it was very effective to some extent. You look at the generation of Peter Mkaba, when he was president of the Youth League, there was a true revolution. Julius Malema came in, and more people were interested again in politics. But, I am a leader of the Congress of South African Students. I joined this movement, I think in 2013, I was still in high school. And before I joined COSAS, I joined the ANC Youth League. And this is how I joined the ANC Youth League. There's no one who recruited me into politics. I've always had an interest in politics, because growing up, when my mother prepared me, I was in primary, by the way. When my mother was busy preparing me to go to school, every morning I will be on the TV there watching Morning Live. Yeah. And then what I was interested in was to read the subtitles there, the headlines, this and that. So I gained my interest in politics from that instant. But my father was also a politician who served in Gazankulu. At some point, I'm told he was very naughty. So he was not even wanted by the police, but he was wanted. He was hunted by his parents. So the decision thereof which he took was to flee to exile because he has done a lot of mess at home. But because he says he was a coward, nyana, he did not arrive there. So in 2013, in Kohankowa, I was just gallivanting around my Ekasi, and in the community hall, I saw a banner of the ANC Youth League. I decided to enter there to check as to what is happening there. I arrived, and there were a lot of young people there, and some of them I already knew. And then only to find that it was a BGM of the ANC Youth League. And I said, no, but I'm entering here. It's a BGM, it's a constitutional gathering.
Yeah.
It now means that each and every person who's supposed to be there is supposed to be a member of the Youth League in good standing. But I insisted that I'm entering here. There's no one who's going to stop me from entering. So what was strange is that people were speaking their politics, and some of the people who were there are people who had long been in politics. And it was time for engagements. I remember I just raised my hand, spoke there, and there was an election of the top 5 additional members, and the newly elected person, Nkata Konkuna, who did not even know me by then, before it closed, he says, but can we have Douglas to give us a vote of thanks here? And that time I did not even know what is a vote of thanks, but I tried my level best. I spoke, acknowledged everyone who came there, this and that, but you could hear that the jargon was not political. It was some straight jargon, And then the man is elected. The top 5 is elected. There's a structure. And then on Monday, I was in school. I saw the man coming to the school. He was looking for me there. He found me. He gave me a form of the ANC Youth League. He says, Mchana, sign here. We're going to pay for your membership. He went and paid. In their first BEC meeting, the man called me. He says, come, you are part of our BEC. We are co-opting you. Now, that is how I started my political journey. But I was always a rascal from within. And then now...
What is a rascal from within?
I was always a rascal.
That's nonsense.
So now, I think I had just arrived in Sintsangwesi because in all other schools, I was always expelled. I remember I was expelled in Northern Academy. I was expelled in Meridian Zanini. I was expelled in Meridian Polokwane. And my last alternative was Hudson,
You were like me, McG, Fat Joe, and the late Chile El. May his soul rest in peace.
Definitely. And you know what was strange about that? Is that my father would always ask me at the end of each and every year to say, hey, but son, are you still comfortable in that school? And I said, hey, I think I will need to move here. There's a lot of racism here, man. I will always give my reasons.
So you'd speak your mind.
I'd speak my mind. There's a lot of racism here. But I knew that I was lying because every time my report came, my envelope was a fat envelope. It came with what you called a DCB letter. Don't come back letter. So they will call our parents to come and take our reports, this and that. But I will always make sure that I arrive before my parents so that they do not see the letter there. And then I will go from school to school. Actually, I went to 7 or 8 different schools. Now, I'm at Hudson Sangwisi. I have just arrived that year because Hudson was my last alternative. And then when I arrived there is these things of class reps and what's or not. Hey, I could say, no, but these people are chickening out. I said, no, but I'm contesting here. I contested to be secretary. And I had only been in that school for 2 weeks. when we were called to come and canvass there. And the teachers, they were all surprised to say that of all these people who are contesting here, this man, when he stands up in the assembly to canvass, everyone is busy there, applauding, making noise, this and that. Even before I was, in fact, even when I was just introduced, to say, no, in the position of secretary, we're going to have Ntwana Ngobeni and that last Ngobeni contesting each other. Ntwana no came, she spoke English. But when I went there, I spoke politics. And everyone was happy there. But obviously, you know, these things are always arrangements. I was moved there to say that this boy cannot be 2 weeks in our school and is already known like this. Yeah? I had worked my ground there. So I became part of the additionals of the LRC, and then a week later there was a program where schools from the entire circuit elect LRC leadership for the circuit, and then the people who were delegates to that thing were the president and the secretary. I was an additional. I went there. And then amongst the many things, the many people who made presentations, there was Mr. Shai. Mr. Shai is a history teacher. It's in some school called DZJ. And he introduced us to COSAS, to say that there's an organization, a learners movement, a learners union called the Congress of South African Students. It would also be wise if you joined this movement, this and that. So they even elected, in fact, they even appointed an interim structure, an interim BEC. But I was moved there because I was not even a delegate. But I said, yeah, is where I'm going. And then a BGM of COSAS said, I was moved still, you know, I was moved more than 4 or 5 times before I became a deputy secretary of a COSAS branch. And then it happened as such. I went and led the region I was elected into a region as an additional member. I became the spokesperson of the region. I became an organizer. And the following term, I was elected the regional deputy chairperson. And then when I was still serving as a deputy chair, there was a disbandment of the province. And then I was called to come and serve in the PTT. I became the organizer, I became the spokesperson of the PTT. And then a year or two later, there was the 19th National Congress of COSAS. And, you know, I was leading the province then on interim basis. And what happened is that not even the president of COSAS was known like me, because I will travel to all these provinces, you know. And I will travel to these provinces when I was still in high school. I will skip school for days or for weeks, just to go and do this political work and this and what's so not. Now I am elected into the NEC, but before my election to the NEC, I just want to share this story of what happened when I was in matric. In my matric, I used to stay. Maybe it was a 2 minutes walk from my school. But what I was always sure of is that every day I was late. And I never used the gate to enter school. I always jumped the fence. And I was one person who was a bit smart, who will not fail any subject. So now, my mother is very accommodative to everyone. And in my house, I had a lot of friends staying there. I think in our matric, nearly 10 or 15 staying in the same house, studying this and that. But now I will not study because I was always tired, doing my political things and everything. And amongst the many things which happened is that the results came, our matric results came, all of them had passed. It was only myself who had failed matric. And that is when I started realizing the importance of a second. Because the following year, You know this thing of peer pressure. After matric, you need to go to Pitori, this, that, Joburg, and what so not. The following year, I went and attempted to write my maths and physics again. I was moot again because I was not even determined. You know, I had people telling me, "Hey, this is what you must do, this and that." You know. Now I failed. I failed my matric 3 times consecutively, until to a certain point when I took a decision to say that no, but I think this is now it's time that I do something which is loved by myself and no one else. I can tell you now, I'm at UG, I'm studying my law. Now, the emphasis I'm trying to make here to all young South Africans is that they must not be pressurized into doing anything. They must always do what their heart feels. And they must never, not even at a single point, try and seek relevance where they do not fit in. Because they are going to be victims of their own circumstances. I took decisions which are now working for me. And part of the many decisions I took at some point was to quit alcohol. And I've been sober for 3 years now. Because I did not find anything interesting in alcohol anymore. The only thing which alcohol contributed in me was to make me look like a hobo. And I will not have reached where I am today had I continued in that trajectory. So the message which I am trying to bring to young people is that they must never feel under pressure. They must always go at their pace. Out of the 15 people who used to stay with me at home, there's only a few who I'm still associated with. Because after failing my year, my matric, the following year, I came to Pretoria. I visited one of the friends who I stayed with in my house, and then I could see that this person is not even accommodative to me anymore, and that man literally did not even allow me to sleep in his flat there. So it was me alone, feeling very, very much outside, isolated, this and that. But I then realized that if I do not make space for myself, there's not even a single person anywhere who is going to make that space for me.
A lot of people feel the Youth League died when Julius Malema left, when it was disbanded and there was the entity that was formed. Your take?
Well, Julius Malema is a product of the Congress movement. Julius Malema is a product of the Congress of South African Students. He served as the president of the most radical student movement, which is in preparatory to leading the ANC Youth League. And, once you are a product of COSAS and go to the Youth League, you do not find anything strange there. You look at everyone who has led COSAS and later led the ANC Youth League, you will realize that not, but these people are radical. So now, there was an introduction of the entity in 2013, after the disbandment of the Youth League in 2012. This was basically because all the people could not bear the brunt of being confronted anymore by young people. Because you must remember that the generation of Julius Malema in the ANC Youth League is the first ever in the ANC Youth League to have ever went to an NGC, the National General Council, and took a resolution, a generational mission which they called economic emancipation in our lifetime, economic freedom. So now, very old people within the ANC felt that these people are now gallivanting our spaces. So now, the appointment of the entity will now mean that they're going to appoint people who are ice boys to that leadership of the ANC, people who are clueless about politics, people who are going to ridicule the policy positions of the ANC Youth League, this and that. So we had expected that, to say that we're not going to have an appointment of a radical youth league. Because these people who are appointed now, they are only there to serve the interest of the ANC leadership and nothing else. They are not there for young people. They are appointed. They are not elected. So obviously, you don't expect any form of revolution from them.
Is there a succession plan though in the ANC right now? Because a lot of people are saying we are just being led by older people who are not prepared to give as many young people as possible a chance to to not only gain political knowledge but to rise up the ranks or to emerge in national leadership. I mean, if you look at the current parliament and you look at the youngest member there, a lot of people are not impressed.
Well,
Youth leadership in the ANC.
I'm actually impressed now of what is happening with the ANC in the country, because the ANC Youth League is taking over the ANC. The project started in Gauteng when Leuhang Maile, who's a former leader of the ANC Youth League, contested Panyaza, and for whatever reasons he has lost. But we are confident that TK Ngiza has been elected as a provincial secretary there. And TK is relatively young. It belongs to a generation of young people, in fact the very same generation which the ANC Youth League was vibrant under. Yesterday we were in KwaZulu-Natal. They are relatively younger people who are elected to lead the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. They outsmarted Siyazigalala and Mdumiseni Ntuli. And I'm glad that it is already happening in Gauteng. The combination of Panyaza and TK is working well and positively for the ANC. Because our biggest challenge and crisis as the ANC currently is Gauteng. And once we lose Gauteng, it now means that we are a zonified ANC. The ANC is a liberation movement and cannot be expected to be a rural movement. So the chances are there only if these old people swallow their pride to say that our time has ended. It is time for young people to take over. Because these old people, at some point, they were young and they were very sharp, they were very vibrant, and they fought the sitting leadership of the ANC to say that no, but we need to enter into that space. So our sole responsibility and duty as the young people within the ANC now is to make sure that we wage a fight for the soul of the ANC. And I've said it too, I think, in an interview, to say that this is high time we fight as young people. And we're going to fight people here. We're going to fight people in toilets. We're going to fight people in baby showers. We're going to fight people in public spaces. We're going to fight people in their rooms. We're going to fight people everywhere, just for the soul of the ANC. South Africa cannot afford to be led by the Democratic Alliance. South Africa cannot afford to be led by this Hefudi person, Emen Mashaba. Just imagine a person who cannot even pursue any form of a revolution. His name is not even a part of any is not even in the gallery of revolutionaries. But because the ANC is messing up currently, we risk having these people leading us. But Rona, as the young people of the ANC, we are going to fight, and we have already started fighting. That is why, and in this fight of ours, we don't fear anyone.
The EFF is growing every election.
Well, the EFF needs to grow because they've got a consistent, a revolutionary, consistent president, Julius. Even when he's a flip-flopper, he always says what the people want to hear. It's not like Julius is going to implement whatever he's saying there. He's not going to implement at all. But he always tells the people what they want to hear. And because the ANC has cornered itself to a certain corner where it is projecting itself to be not able to provide services for our people, the people of South Africa have just found an alternative of listening to the nonsense which is spoken by Julius.
a lot of people are saying there's lots of assassinations in the ANC. How does the ANC rid itself of the corruption problem?
Well, some people contest the African National Congress not because they want to serve the ANC or the people of South Africa, but they do that on the sole basis that they want to have access to resources. We have people who are very greedy in the African National Congress today. So some of them contest the ANC solely for that. That is why you have comrades killing each other. So this thing is just about a proximity to resources. It happens mainly with male comrades, more especially in the KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, how do you kill a person for being a councillor? Why do you kill a person for contesting to be a branch chair of the African National Congress? So now, these people have got very huge interests, business interests, monetary interests, and everything. So they believe that if one person contests that space, they are going to shut the doors for them. And that is not what the ANC was formed for. The ANC was formed on the sole basis of liberating our people. The only thing which I think needs to be done now is to have conscious members of the ANC. This weekend we're burying the deputy president of SASCO in Ngobeni in the Eastern Cape. And before he died, Matiwan challenged us to say that there is a crisis of conscience within the populace of the African National Congress. The type of members we recruit to the African National Congress today, the ANC does not recruit people anymore. It only mobilizes hooligans. So the type of members we have in the ANC is the problem the ANC is having. Because there are people who come to the ANC for the sole basis of helping other people win BGMs. There are people who come to the ANC because they want to have access to the leadership of the ANC, mayors, this and that. So if we have got the ANC has members who understand the role, the duties, and the responsibilities of the African National Congress, we are going to get rid of this corruption which is spoken about.
Will Cyril be re-elected this December?
Well, I think I'm a disciplined member of the African National Congress. Who supported Cyril in 2017. But disciplined as I am, I just want to wait for the processes of nominations to start, because I don't want to jump before the gun is fired. I don't want to be labeled as a person who has been sent to come and speak on behalf of Cyril, this and that. But I think a person is elected or re-elected based on the work he has done. So a conference of the African National Congress will decide on who gets elected or is Cyril re-elected in the National Conference of the ANC, because I think. In fact, this week we're going to a policy conference of the ANC. We're going to check how many policies have been implemented and which policies are we going to draft, going to the National Conference of the ANC. So I don't want to be found in a position where I speak on behalf of Cyril. But that which I will not do as a disciplined member of the African National Congress is to go out publicly and do what Bukhalnias are doing today, to say Ramaphosa is a sellout, this and that. No, you don't do that as a member of the African National Congress. You remain disciplined until a certain point where a room is opened for such engagements to take place.
What is your take on the land issue?
The land is very important. The land is very vital. But I will respond to this question. Relating it to the policy position of the African National Congress, there is the expropriation of land without compensation. I don't have a problem with the land being expropriated, being given back to black people and this and that. The problem I have, one, is that we risk giving the land back to people who do not have an idea of what they're going to use the land for. But secondly, I think the ANC as formed in 1912. The land being it's a what you call it's a inaugural policy position. The ANC was supposed to have done that a long time ago. I think people would have adjusted now on how to use the land, this and that. But another challenge which I'm having now is that as a young people of South Africa, or the ANC Youth League, we took a policy position, economic freedom in our lifetime. And there seems not to be any old person entertaining that thing. So the policy position on land was taken by the ANC in Nasrec. And in that conference, the majority of the people who were there are very old people. You find that they're taking this policy position because they want to settle a political score or whatsoever. I am saying that let us have a consultation on how best can we take our land. But in the process of taking back our land, we need to be skilling young people on how to use the land, because we don't want to give a person a 10-hectare farm and the only thing they do there is to build a shebeen or a house. The land must be reproductive, and people think that the land is only what you call it's only farms, it's only residential areas. Even mining, the mines are the land on their own. So if this is your land, it was taken by the white government, and then now they want to give it back to you, and the white government has turned this thing into a mine. They want to give the land back to you. We must be cognizant of the fact that these people who are mining here already have got on the means of production. And DJ's book comes, he wants to take over the mine. Black people are not going to invest in you, because black people are very jealous. Black people do not believe in fellow black people. And it means that the mine, which has been successful over the years, is going to fail. So now, the land need to be taken back to the people, but not on a premature basis.
The most important issue as a young person yourself, education. A lot of people don't feel we're getting relevant education to 2022 that is relevant to a young person in 2022. What is your take on the current education status in the country?
Well, the education system of South Africa is not working for South Africans, because we have got an education system which prepares the young people of South Africa to be job seekers and not job creators. I believe that the only form of education which is going to eradicate the unemployment we find ourselves in today is a career-oriented curriculum. We need to go to school to be taught how to create our own jobs. For a practical example, in life science, I was taught about a cell of an onion. And after my matric, I arrived in Joburg. I arrived in university and everything. I have not come across how an onion assists in building me as a young South African. There's not even a single job here in South Africa where the requirements are a cell of an onion. Now, if we get a life science which teaches the young people of South Africa on how to create or make African herbals, it means that when you are done with your matric, you are now going to be able to create those herbals, sell to people, heal people, this and that. But I also think that a career-oriented curriculum will contribute positively to South Africa, in the sense that it is going to be able to take young people into a terrain where they do what they love. Because success is not measured by the amount of money you have in your bank account, the houses you own or the cars you own, but it is about doing what you love. So the curriculum of South Africa is highly nonsensical because there is nothing which you are taught in school which is South African. There is nothing which you are taught in school which is African. There is no solution in our career in our curriculum currently. It does not prepare us to follow our careers. We are just forced into learning so that we sometimes, education is in South Africa is just fashion. There are people today who are seated at home with their degrees, but they are unemployable. You are an entrepreneur yourself. And I think this is a skill you gained in the street. You did not gain this thing at school. You gained this thing in the streets and you are successful today. But had you had that opportunity to be taught how to be an entrepreneur direct from school, I'm sure by now more fire will be more effective and known than Coke itself. But because you were not taught on how to become an entrepreneur, go school. It is only when you were old and venturing into new ideas that you came with more fire. But I believe that more fire is something which you have always had in your head. It is an idea which you have always had in your head. There are millions of South Africans, young South Africans today, who have got progressive ideas, but they cannot do anything about it because they do not even know the correct channels of doing those things, because they are not taught. The South African Bureau of Standards, I think that is something that's a procedure which is supposed to be taught in school. Driving itself is something which is supposed to be taught at school. Learner's license should be part of our curriculum, because I believe that it is not everyone who sits in a classroom, and this one is practical. It is not everyone who sits in a classroom who is going to be a doctor, who is going to be a lawyer. There are people who are going to be taxi drivers. There are people who are going to be truck drivers. So why don't you prepare them direct from high school? We have got a problem of corruption in South Africa. The corruption which comes in forms of the chocho with regards to traffic cops asking money for coke, this and that. This is necessarily because when these drivers did their licenses, they only paid a certain money. But they don't have an idea of these road signs. They don't have an idea of the road rules. They don't have an idea on anything. The only thing they can do is to exchange their legs between a clutch and accelerator brake. So if that thing is taught at school, it now means that it is going to be embedded in your mind forever. Because education is actually what remains after one has forgotten what they have learned at school. So we need to change our curriculum in South Africa. The current curriculum which we are using in South Africa is a British rejected curriculum. So this curriculum was dumped in South Africa. The only thing we do every now and then is to change the name of the curriculum, but never the content. And what is most imperative in this regard is the content of the curriculum.
And I also kind of believe the government should assist entrepreneurs more. Yes, I do know they do here and there, but I think, when you look at a lot of the biggest companies globally, they were helped by their own governments. Even currently in America would go on and on about Elon Musk. But Elon Musk is actually being assisted by the US government. Alibaba, for instance, even in China. But I don't see a lot of that happening locally.
South Africa is a country of greed. South Africa is a country led by my Pantiti, who believe that when they are sent to leadership positions, it is just an opportunity for them to remake the time they have lost in exile. So giving an opportunity to a black person is a curse, actually. Giving an opportunity to a black child is an insult, at least according to them. Because black parents or black people in general, do not believe that a next door neighbor's son must flourish. They believe that it is only their children who should see the light of the day. So I don't expect the government at this point, but especially the government which is led by these people I'm referring to as Mapantiti, to give opportunities to black people. The only thing they're good at is praising white people. You go to all parts of the country, go to Ekasi. When you arrive there, you will find young men. When you enter there, the only thing they want from you is 2 rand. Frotman kupa 2 rand kupa boys, ne? Because they have been programmed to ask. They have not been programmed to
Create for themselves.
To create for themselves.
That's what Penyo always says. He says the grant system and just the system of getting our people used to getting things from the government for free, getting grants for free. Yes, it's not for free, and you have to look after your country, you have to look after your people. But it's a wrong notion. That's what he thinks, that we should be creating people who create work, but who create jobs for other people.
You know, the problem here is that we have got people who do not want to give others an opportunity. People are already programmed that the only thing which a black person is capable of doing is to ask and nothing else. And what worsens the problem is that as the young people of this country, we have fell into that trap. We are not confronting any of this nonsense. I mean, what is that nonsense of 350? What can a young person do with 350?
That's actually $20.
That's a $20.
That's very embarrassing.
I mean, we have got serious problems as young people. You know, now every time I've got money, ne? Because at least if I was like you in the investment space and what's not, I will be investing. But every time I've got little money, I spend it for the most essential things, you know. So if I have 350 now, if the government gives me 350, it now means I have to pour petrol with that 350. Ne? Petrol is very expensive. And it means that for me to be able to pour petrol again, I will have to wait for another month. So we have become very dependent on the government to an extent that we are not able to think out of the box anymore. I can tell you confidently that we have got a government which to some extent thinks it cares for our people, but in general it does not. Necessarily because we are led by people who do not have a plan. You know, when you don't have a plan, you just do anything. Today, South Africa is having a problem with its own fiscus. These 350s have not been paid for months now because there's no budget for that. But people have been promised, they've applied, they've been accepted, but the government is unable to pay them because these are grants which are paid from a state of no plan. You know, Thabo Mbeki says that our country is on autopilot, and I cannot dispute. But this is mainly because, and I will keep on emphasizing this, this is mainly because we have got young people who stand for nothing. The only thing they find very important is to breathe. As long as they've breathed, it's fine. But they're not willing to make a change on anything. So if young people come together, they unite, I think we're going to build even better communities. You know, if we were to confront a deployee of the ANC, who is a mayor, who is an MEC, in our group, to say, hey, Chief, this is what we want. Ne? and Abon or no, but these people are serious. There's no how it's not going to do it. But I think even the lack of knowledge on things, man, is compromising us.
But there's a lot of brilliant and bright, amazing young people in South Africa. I mean, look at yourself. Look, there's a lot, man, and these are different fields, not only just in politics. And I've always been saying, young people must brighten their own corners. I don't think people have to wait to become politicians to lead. They must lead in their own right and just understand that nobody's coming to save us. People must stand up and do for themselves. But obviously, we do have to hold our governments accountable. Right now, we're looking at our leadership, and you are making example about our old leaders, and people are saying, for instance, if you look at our ruling party, your organization, the ANC, we've got our leader who's currently under the dark cloud of Parafara. And I would like to hear about Parafara, because I always kind of feel the type of leaders we have, that type of leadership trickles all the way down to ordinary people. And if corruption has just been made so much of a norm and it's become so normalized, I think it goes all the way down to us looking at young leaders like yourself and seeing potential. But then some people being skeptical as well. Like, are we sure that when Douglas gets to where he's supposed to get to, he's not going to forget about us? He's now all of a sudden going to become like everybody else. Maybe your take on the Parafara issue and just the type of disciplined, young, amazing, brilliant leaders that are emerging to also not get caught up in what our older leaders have been doing, which is, corrupt activities.
Well, in relation to Palapala, I don't want to fall into the trap which people are already calling for the head of the president, this and that. I don't belong to any faction in the ANC, actually. The only faction maybe which I am likely to belong to is a faction of young people within the ANC. But in relation to Palapala, as a South African, I believe that President Ramaphosa needs to be held accountable, because there is no one who is above the law. There is no one who's superior in our country. So if indeed everything which is alleged to have happened has really happened there in Palapala, President Ramaphosa needs to be held accountable without any doubt, without any fear of favor or contradiction. So now, coming to myself, having proximity to these resources and everything, I think the most important thing is, for one, not to change the terrain they find themselves in, because I did not join the ANC to have proximity to resources. Like I have mentioned here, that I come from a family which is very open, which is very loving, which is very caring. I will tell you, my mother was a school principal, and when we stayed at our home during our matric, my mother never allowed any parent to contribute in terms of food and rental. She always made sure that she compromises for every one of us. So that thing, I think, the love for our people is embedded on me. I was breastfed the love of our people. So I don't think there's nothing which will ever change, because in the last few years, I can confidently say that there's been a lot of development on me. I have changed from one stage to another, but at no point have I ever changed to be the worst character. Even today, with the little resources that I have, I am still able to assist where I'm able. I don't have money, I don't have anything, but each and every little resource that I have, I am now able to at least share with the most vulnerable. Because I don't believe that when I get to the top, I must now look down on the people. Even today, I still give people lifts. People who, by the way, when I grow up, will not even give me lifts. I still give them those leaves. I still greet them. I am still humble as I was. The Douglas who was then. I don't change my principles because one, it happens mostly on people who are captured. I'm not captured. I don't report to anyone. Even when the state arrested me a few weeks ago here in
Were
Bedford,
you arrested?
Yes.
What happened?
Because the state believes that there are people who are sending me to fight Praveen, this and that. They arrested me. They abducted me. They went through my phone. They installed their nonsense there, which records the calls and SMSs. And I'm willing to keep that thing here in my phone. I'm not going to remove it because I've got nothing to hide. I am fighting for the people of South Africa. I am fighting for the soul of the African National Congress. There is no one who has sent me. I am not captured. I am not handled anywhere. And I do not report to anyone. But I am responding actively to the frustrations faced by our people on the ground. And I think that is a principle I will keep in me forever until I die.
Let's get into the immigration laws in South Africa. Your stance, or what is your take on Operation Dudula?
Well, Operation Dudula is just a group of young people who also feel that the country needs to be protected. You know, there are people who are calling this Operation Dudula vigilante, this and that. Now, I don't want to fall into that trap again because our country needs to be protected by all means necessary. Today we're having a lot of terrorism taking place in our country. People are being shot at taverns, this and that. This is necessarily because our borders are not protected. You know, we are doing this podcast here now, and around us there are stop nonsenses, there are electric fences, what's or not, because we need this protection. So the country in its entirety needs protection. We don't hate foreigners, but don't come to South Africa on an illegal basis. Because people who come to South Africa on illegal basis, they have already done a crime of getting into the country illegal. And when they arrive in the country, they still engage in illegal activities. So even if they came to the country to do illegal activities, but if they are documented, it now means that the state is able to apprehend them. Because today we have got a problem of criminals who are not apprehended by the state. Someone just comes, shoots, leaves, is not traced. So Africans must come to South Africa. South Africa is their home, but they must use the proper channels. They must not come here at defense. They must use the borders today so that even when something happens to them, by the way, they must be accounted for. I love Africans. I am an African. These people are suffering in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean, everywhere. South Africans are suffering. But I still find it very important for South Africans to rise up for their own safety. Because that which is happening today in South Africa, hey, it's very scary. What happened to the person who shot the people in Soweto? The person has not been found yet. There's a person who shot two people in Katlehong. That person has been found because that person is a South African, documented, and justice will be served. But for the 15 families in Soweto, I doubt justice will ever be served. What happened to the Senzo Meyiwa case? The people who are in the dock today, there are a lot of contradiction. We don't know who shot the people there. So, the immigration process of South Africa, I think, should be strengthened. And at least we have got Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Home Affairs, who is working very hard to protect our borders. We have got a problem of poaching, rhino poaching. The animals are being extinct. We don't know who poaches those things. But if we had proper measures, it means that we're going to be able to protect our rhinos. People are being raped today. And when they take the semen from the scene, they find that no, but this semen cannot be identified or cannot be attached to anyone because of people who come to the country undocumented. And it's not only Zimbabweans who are foreigners, by the way. Even white people in South Africa, there are those who are foreigners. Their only lack is that some of them are documented. But if there are white people in South Africa who are not documented, they must leave. If there are Pakistanis who are not documented, they must leave. If there are Chinese who are not documented, they must leave. If there are Americans who are not documented, they must leave. They are all foreigners and illegal foreigners for that fact.
Is the ANC still the answer for the future of black people in South Africa?
The young people in the ANC are the answer for the future of South Africa.
What is your future looking like?
We are going to take over. The process has already started, and we are going to remain active as we are to make sure that we save this ANC, because saving the ANC is saving South Africa. There's no South Africa outside the African National Congress. So, well, the future is bright. We are going there, but it's going to be a very difficult battle to engage in. It is going to have a lot of casualties. Some of us might even be killed, arrested. We might be isolated, but we don't care, for as long as we have made the change we are looking for, because the change we are looking for is us. These old people are tired, and they are now realizing that we are the future. So that is why they are trying by all means to isolate and purge us. So, but we are not going to entertain the purges. We are not going to entertain the isolation. We are just going to continue as we are. So the future of South Africa, we are anticipating a South Africa which has a total transformation of the curriculum. We are anticipating a South Africa which does not victimize its young people. We are anticipating a South Africa without a Pravin Gordhan.
Are you scared?
Of what?
Of anything.
No, I'm not
Politics
scared.
is a dirty game.
I'm not scared. I don't fear death, so why should I fear men? So I'm not scared of anything. There's nothing actually. There's no one actually who can ever scare me on anything. So I'm not scared. I know that politics are a dirty game, but if I'm arrested, at least I will not be arrested for having stolen sweets at ShopRite. I will be arrested for participating in a revolution. If I die, my name will remain forever.
Young people who are like you or even younger than you are interested to get into politics. 3 books that you say either changed your life, or 3 books that you'd like to recommend to our audiences out there. Before I ask you that question, let me first start saying your message to our women out there, because it's we are in Women's Month.
Well, and I love women, Shem.
Same here. Sure.
So I love women. The message to our women is that they must remain strong, but they must stop these things of theirs of playing victims of patriarchy, more especially in politics. I am saying this because women out there always use this patriarchy card. Hey, women are not leading, women are not given opportunities, this and that. But the population of South Africa is more than 60% women. So it means that if women wanted, they would outsmart all of us and they will enter into that space. So women just need to be united. Women just need to prove a united front so that they are able to take over. Women have bared the most difficult brand of giving birth to us. Just imagine the woman who gave birth to such a hot head like me. Obviously to some point she was being criticized. This one just gave birth to a nonsense, this and that. But the mother remained strong. She raised us up. Women always have the ability of making sure that even when conditions are difficult, they are always there's always perseverance. So our women should just continue being strong, and women must also start protecting themselves, because the men in our society have started to be monsters. You know, our women are being butchered on a daily basis, and that thing needs to be stopped, because a society without women cannot be a normal society. When you get into your house, DJ Spoo, and your wife is there, obviously there will be those bolanyana quarrels, ne? But you will understand that at least there is something which keeps the family together. So just imagine if it was a family full of men, and you find that all these men are just drunkards. There won't be any order. So women are there to keep us together as men. Women are there to shape us. Women are there to protect us. Women are there to support us. Women are assisting us. They are positive in our lives in many different forms. So the butchering of women has to stop, because if it does not stop, we risk having a society which does not have direction at all. We already have a country which is swaying away from its own direction. So you take women out of the space, you are going to give us a society without any direction. Women are very pivotal. Women are very significant. You know, if there's anything that I want as a woman, that is why even when we go out for entertainment, really magita, there's always that element of having these flowers of the revolution just to be next to us, you know, so that the place is decorated, you know, so that we enjoy properly. So women have got this natural ability of keeping the decorum of society stable. So when the day arrives, you must tell them that I said Happy Women's Day.
Lovely. It is Women's Day next week. Do you have a woman yourself? Are you married?
No, I don't do those things.
I don't do those things. Oh, jolly, my brother.
Yeah. You know, you need to be strategic in that department. We're recording here.
Yeah.
So when we're recording, we don't want to find ourselves in a space where there's a lot of contradictions in society.
Sure.
After a year, we're getting many calls, you know. So I decide to be, in that space, I'm very private, actually. Yeah, because, you know, more especially in politics, there are these ones who just see you as a jumping castle. They just jump onto you, this and that. So I don't want to create contradictions here. So
you're not in any relationship? You're single?
No. I don't want to create contradictions. I don't want to create any contradiction here.
Sure.
So in relation to relationships, that which you must know, DJ's boo, is that I love women. I have a problem with women. And I take good care of women, by the way. I've got very fragile hands when it comes to that space. But that confirmation which you're looking for,
sure.
I am not going to get it yet.
Oh, okay, sure. 3 books?
Well, I've only read one book in my life, Long Walk to Freedom. I read Long Walk to Freedom because it is an autobiography of Nelson Mandela.
And where do you get your political consciousness? And how do you get to grow as a politician if you don't read?
I read articles. I love reading articles. I spend most of my time in newspapers. Even growing up, there's a shop, Ekasi, High Point, ne? So every day, I knew that every Monday I had to buy Daily Sun. On Wednesdays, I used to buy Sowetan, and then there's this newspaper called Litawa Herald. It's a local newspaper. So every now and then, every week, I will read those newspapers.
So you do read?
I do read.
Okay.
I just don't read I will tell you why. I just don't read books. So, and actually, I stopped buying these newspapers when I started appearing on those newspapers, because it sounds very awkward sometimes. Have you ever listened to a voice note where you are speaking
Of your own
yourself
voice,
of
yeah.
your own voice? So it sounds
Awkward.
very awkward, you know. So I went to some shop. I think I was in a garage one time, and I arrived there. I went to the newspaper gallery there, and then in the front page, you know, it was me there. You know, I looked at that thing that said, "But here there's nothing interesting. Let me just pass over." So now I do read. I read online, but the only content I do not read is this one of Marxism, Leninism, because I find it very misleading. That is why we have got the SACP today, which has swayed away from its duty. It's not, the SACP is not holding the alliance into account, because these people read too much, man. They read too much.
It's good to read too much.
They read too much,
But
but they read a wrong content.
Sometimes the content is right, but it might not be exactly 100% applicable in our continent or in our country as it might have been used in other countries. Because we are always looking at examples of countries like about Singapore, about China, etc., you know?
Yeah,
But it is good to arm yourself with knowledge.
That's
Even if
true.
sometimes you don't like people, but it's always great to just learn their story and listen to, their
Yeah.
own life's experiences.
The only book which I read from page 1 and to up to page 452 is A Long Walk to Freedom, because that thing is an autobiography of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was an idol, and there are many people who are saying things about Mandela. So I decided to have my own narrative of Mandela. Now I went and read the book, and even today, I have learned a lot actually. I still remember what are the contents of the book, but the knowledge which I have sometimes, I can say that to some extent, it's natural, because my mother was an A student, my father was an A student, but Liana also failed matric 3 times because he was very naughty, this and that. Now, the Keita who were burying in the Eastern Cape over the weekend was one of the greatest idealists in the Congress movement. He used to read, and if there's a person I feared sitting next to, was him. Now, with me, I think reading a lot actually, is going to limit me from the trajectory which I'm in, because now I enjoy fighting. So I don't want to be found in a position where I'm reading a book which speaks about discipline. I'm disciplined, but I don't want to read a book which says this is how you should present your discipline, this and that. But I would encourage young people to read. It's very important. Now I already know my story at this point. So those who do not know their stories, they must go and read, they must research. I do research. That is why when we did this thing of Eskom, that is why I'm able to tell you that there is 20,000 megawatts which went missing. This morning, there's 2,000 megawatts which went missing under the route and Praveen. That is necessary because I've read. Now, there are books which you read and are aimed at motivating you. So I'm going to be very contrary on that one, because like I've said that I only believe in the decisions which I take for myself. So motivation to some extent with me is limiting, because you get DJ's Boo who has walked a certain path, and motivation will expect you to walk the same path as DJ Spoo, and you find that the path is not designated for you. So if you are able to walk, to take your own decisions, if you are able to walk your own path, if you are able to create your own ways, you will not need any motivation from anyone. So reading is important. Equip yourself with knowledge. But I have read, I just don't have time to be reading every now and then. I have time to be in action. I've got time to be in the revolution. I have time to be finding solutions for our people. I have time to be responding to the challenges faced by our people on the ground.
Very proud of you, Douglas, man. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I think you've got a bright future, and I think there's still going to be a lot of things you're going to learn. But this country do need young people like yourself who are not afraid, to, you know, not even raise up their hands, who are not afraid to just stand up and just grab the bull by its horn and just lead.
Yeah.
And yes, we'll all make mistakes, but the more you grow, the better you become. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I look at my journey now and I'm like, wow. If I didn't make those mistakes, I wouldn't be becoming the type of man that I'm becoming. Because even I hear the late great Utatu Mandela, even himself, apparently in his youthful years, he was a very radical figure.
Definitely. You know, in relation to the narratives which are given by the media, I want to applaud you for starting this podcast, because I understand a podcast to be an alternative source of information, where you get information from the horse's mouth. I will give you a practical example of how the media in South Africa, the mainstream media, has been captured. Because it's true, it has been captured. Not even the SABC is independent and impartial now. Each and every media house is captured. I will give you a practical example. Becky Cele went to Cape Town at some point, and there was an engagement between him and some boy called Cameroon, something like that. Now, when the media writes the story about the incident which happened there, Cameroon was being presented as the most revolutionary young person in South Africa. Why? Because he's exchanging words with a black man. Ne? Now, we go to Vets. We have an appointment with Pravin. Pravin arrives there, he speaks a lot of nothing, a lot of nonsense. Ne? We confront that nonsense. To say, but Pravin, it cannot be who says, who utters such here. You know? After that thing, I woke up tomorrow. All media houses had written that Pravin was heckled by a group of students. And these articles are being written by people who sometimes calls me for an article to say, we want a comment on this and that. They are not saying that last Ngobeni. They're saying a group of students spit racial remarks on Pravin. They are hooligans. They are this and that. They are not even saying that last Ngobeni. At least those who, I mean, I've done a lot of interviews with ENCA. I've done a lot of interviews with Newsroom. I've got articles on News 24 everywhere. But now, they are only saying that a group of students. They are not saying Douglas Ngobeni because they want to present me as some rural hooligan who went there to disrupt the Prime Minister, Pravin. So now, in this regard, they are by all means trying to protect Pravin from the entire fiasco. But Begikele, by the very same media, is made the most ungovernable and disrespecting minister. Even when we know that the worst radical in this regard is Pravin. They're not saying anything they're not saying anything bad about Pravin. Because if there's anything bad which happened there, it's Pravin, the arrival of Pravin. Actually, in politics, you know, I will even regret to say that even in this world, the arrival of Pravin in this world has caused the problems for South Africa. But the media will not say that. Now, we're seated here, but in a podcast. This podcast is an alternative destination for information. And I will urge all people in South Africa to stop listening to this Western media which is aimed at reforming the apartheid government in terms of narrative. and they must start engaging in this thing, because watching this thing, subscribing to this podcast, they are not only here to listen to Douglas speaking here, but they are also supporting a black man who has started this thing. Because if we don't do it ourselves, it means that we are just going to continue to have that narrative which is presented by the media to say that a black person is not able. You know, Zuma has been a victim of the media for the longest of time. But you make a comparison from 1994, 2007, 2009, 2017. Zuma started leading the state in 2009 until 2018. But the media will not tell you the developments which Zuma did. The very same media will not say anything about the African National Congress. I mean, they have tried that with you. They have tried to destroy you. They have tried to censor you. They have tried that with Julius. They have tried that with all other politicians. So now, as much as we agree that we are still growing to learn more, because I belong to an organization which is slogan is each one teach one. It now means that we need to impart our knowledge everywhere we go. Me having seated here, I've learned a lot. And obviously there are some things which you have learned, and everyone who is here. So it means going forward, we'll need to create a media alternative which is pro-black. You know, I love IOL, you know, the independent online what. I love it because it is a voice of reason for the black majority masses of our people. We are already under attack. We have got a multi-choice which when Vladimir Putin fights the Western capital through this Ukraine thing, multi-choice decides to switch off Russia today, so that we are not able to see anything which is, in fact, we're not able to see the side of the story of Russia. But we're going to have Al Jazeera, we're going to have ANC, which present Putin as the worst terrorist the worst terrorist in the world. So if we have this kind of media alternatives, our people are now able to hear the black side of the story, because it is always the white side of the story which is presented. That is why even when you go to any house, you know, it is better for the sitting room to be clean, because that is where people arrive in. But your bedroom, whether you have prepared it or not, it does not matter. So people are being given a narrative of the black side of the story, but they're given a narrative of the white side of the story. They are never given the narrative of the black side of the story. So this one is very important. I'm going to tell my friends, all of them, to say that they must subscribe to this one. They must subscribe to podcast, to Visual Mkuku, everything, so that even when the day arrives that we go to the streets to say that we want to shut down multi-choice, we know that we already have an alternative. Because part of the problems, part of the reasons that certain people are not engaging in a revolution is because they do not know where they will find an alternative or a replacement of the things which are already here. I mean, it happened in Russia when McDonald's in Russia threatened to leave this and that. Putin did not waste any time. Just said, fuck off. And then he changed that McDonald's. Agree, sign McDonald's M.
Yeah.
And then he just changed it IBLW. And then he has nationalized it. He has had an alternative. So Leruna, the day we decide to say that we are going to bend down the offices are multi-choice, we know that there is an alternative form of source of information, at least owned by black people, who are going to give us the black part of the story.
It's so interesting with what you're saying. And just to add on that, guys, these platforms are not ours, including YouTube. It might be an alternative to mainstream media, but there's a lot of censorship in these platforms. So I encourage all of the podcasters out there to also have your own website or form your own streaming platform, where as much as you are loading on your Buzzsprouts of this world, your Spotify's, your Deezers and your YouTubes, you also have got your own website where if worst comes to anything that happens that becomes the worst of the worst, these platforms get shut down. People know they can still find you on your own www. whatever it is, and you've got all of your content there and it's updated and it is as proper as it is on the platforms like Abo YouTube, etc. So even ourselves, before the end of this year, we're going to launch our own streaming platform or our own website, so that even if you're not watching us from YouTube or Spotify or listening to us from any of these platforms, you know that you can still find us on our own platform. The national spokesperson of COSAS, Mr. Douglas Ngobeni, and who also is the chair of, you call it the Eskom,
National Eskom Crisis Committee.
the National Eskom Crisis Committee. Let me say it again. National Eskom Crisis Committee.
NECC.
NECC.
Correct.
Thank you very much, my brother. Proud of
Thank
you.
you, Krotman. This is a privilege, actually.
Oscar, disappoint me, bro. Please make us proud.
Apparently, there are people who are already saying Praveen is giving me money. What? I want that money. I want to fight him with that money. So there won't be any disappointments. Do not expect the less. From here going forward, it's going to be the revolution wire.
Keep growing, and may the good Lord continue to bless you and your family, and let the struggle continue, my brother.
Aluta.
Aluta. But young people are doing great things with their lives. The question is, what are you doing with yours? I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, son.
This is the Hustlers Corner.